We come back now to talk about the fallacies of presumption, and that first category within those fallacies, the fallacies of induction. And the first one we want to look at in this video is the fallacy of the false analogy. Now, first of all, we want a good definition for analogy, so take a look at this. An analogy is a comparison of two things that are alike in some way. Obviously, that can be a good thing. It doesn't always mean that every analogy is false. In fact, take a look at this famous analogy. So here's the Apostle Paul, and he writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, he says, just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. Right? He's making a comparison between two things that have a similarity, a physical human body and the body of Christ. For in one spirit we are all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one spirit. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. He's holding his little scroll there. It's even written in Greek, some of the Greek text there from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. So that's an example of a proper analogy, right? There's a proper similarity in what he's talking about, comparing a human body with the body of Christ. Where this becomes a fallacy is when the points of similarity really, they're just not there. The similarity just isn't strong enough to warrant the comparison. And for that, it's Logic Dragon and Kangaroo. So here's Logic Dragon saying, stand back. I'm going to burn that village because a little girl stepped on my tail. And Kangaroo says, what? That makes no sense. Logic Dragon says, sure it does. She hurt me, so I get to hurt her village. He's making the analogy between the pain of a little girl stepping on his tail and the pain of burning down an entire village. And Kangaroo rightly calls him out on that and says, first of all, those two things aren't similar at all. Right? There's vast difference in the pain and the damage in destroying an entire village and just getting your tail stepped on. And then she says, and second of all, you really do need to read the Bible. So you want to be careful when you're making an analogy, which is a type of comparison, that the points that you're trying to compare are really similar enough to warrant the comparison. The next fallacy we want to talk about in the fallacies of induction is the false cause. And false cause comes about when you have a weak cause and effect relationship in your argument. And there's actually several different types of the false cause, and we're going to take a look at all of those right now. So the first one has a wonderful Latin title, post hoc ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore, because of this. Very often people will put two things together and say, well, this happened and then that happened. Therefore, the first thing must have been the cause of the second. And that just simply isn't always the case. It could just be coincidence. It just could be a sequence of events. It doesn't automatically mean that the one has caused the other. As in this example from a television show called The West Wing.
I heard.
What else?
The Ryder Cup team is declining our invitation to come to the White House.
You're kidding.
Because of the joke.
You're kidding.
I'm not.
The Ryder Cup team.
It's a group of the best golfers in the country.
I know what the Ryder Cup team is. Thanks, Mrs. Lanningham.
Sir, this may be a good time to talk about your sense of humor.
I've got an intelligence briefing, a security briefing, and a 90-minute budget meeting all scheduled for the same 45 minutes. You sure this is a good time to talk about my sense of humor?
No.
Me neither.
What else?
It's just that it's not the first time it's happened.
I know.
Talking about Texas, sir?
I know.
USA Today asks you why you don't spend more time campaigning in Texas, and you say it's because you don't look good in funny hats.
It was big hats.
What difference does it make?
It makes a difference.
The point is we got whomped in Texas.
We got whomped in Texas twice.
We got whomped in the primary, and we got whomped in November.
I think I was there.
And it was avoidable, sir.
CJ, on your tombstone, it's going to read post hoc ergo propter hoc.
Okay, but none of my visitors are going to be able to understand my tombstone.
27 lawyers in the room. Anybody know post hoc ergo propter hoc? Josh?
Post, after hoc, ergo, therefore, after hoc, therefore, something else hoc.
Thank you. Next.
Well, if I got more credit on the 443 thing.
Leo.
After it, therefore, because of it.
After it, therefore, because of it. It means One thing follows the other, therefore it was caused by the other. But it's not always true. In fact, it's hardly ever true. We did not lose Texas because of the hat joke. Do you know when we lost Texas?
When you learn to speak Latin?
Go figure.
Well, the second type of false cause is the partial cause, where someone thinks that something is the cause of something, but they've only looked at a part of the situation. Now, we'll talk about it after you take a look at this clip from the film Forrest Gump.
Are you retarded or just plain stupid? Look, I'm Forrest Gump. Just run away, Forrest. Run, Forrest! Run away! Hurry! Get the brakes! Hurry up! Let's get it! Come on! Look out, Johnny! Here we come! Get you! Run, Forrest! Run! Run, Forrest! We're back here, you! Run, Forrest!
Now, you wouldn't believe it if I told you.
But I could run like the wind blows. From that day on, if I was going somewhere, I was running.
Well, somebody might have looked at that scene and said, well, because the little boy lost the braces on his legs, they came falling and breaking off his legs, that's what caused him to run fast. But that's really only a partial cause. If he had worn those braces on his legs for a number of years, his legs would have worked against the resistance of the braces and actually built up his muscles, so that when the braces were removed and his muscles were able to run freely, then he could run so much faster. So it wasn't just that he lost the braces. That's only a partial cause for his running fast. It was also the development of his muscles during the time that he wore the braces. Our third type of false cause is one that confuses necessary and sufficient causes. And before we can get into this, we really have to look at the definition of the words necessary and sufficient. And this will actually help in other things that you study as well. So here's Aristotle. And he says, when applied to a cause, the word necessary means without which not. And the word sufficient means with which must. So as you copy that definition, let me say a little bit about that. The idea behind something that is necessary means without it, something else is not going to happen. If A is necessary for B, then that means without A, you can't have B. Now that's very different from sufficient, which, as Aristotle here says, means with which must. If A is sufficient for B, then that would mean that if you've got A, you have to have B also, because with it, B must occur. Now, instead of talking about A's and B's, let's look at an actual example. So here we go. We got the science class, and the girl on the left holding a beaker there. She says, "We learned so much in science class." And a little girl in the back there, she says, "Our teacher said it takes oxygen for something to burn." And the fellow in the ball cap is thinking to himself, this room is full of oxygen, so why isn't it on fire? And you see, he's confused necessary and sufficient cause. Oxygen is necessary for something to burn. Without it, you can't have a fire. You can't have something to burn. But it's not a sufficient cause. Obviously, there's oxygen all around us, and things aren't just bursting into flames. So you don't want to confuse necessary with sufficient. Our next example of the false cause is another one that confuses something. It confuses cause and effect. The confusing of cause and effect. And in this example, we have some people at a concert, and the one fellow says, "That band is so arrogant. They only play when people applaud." And his friend says, "No, doofus. People applaud because the band is playing." The first guy had really confused the cause and effect. It was the band's playing that caused the applause, not the other way around. And finally, our last type of false cause is the neglect of a common cause. Neglect of a common cause. And here's a fellow, he's over here on the side, he's talking to some people, and he says, "I want to tell you all about the good news of Jesus." And the girl over here in the gold, she says, "If that guy wouldn't have his nose in the Bible all the time, he wouldn't talk about Jesus so much." And the fellow in blue says, "Well, maybe it's his relationship with Jesus that makes him do both those things. Read the Bible and share the gospel." She was only focusing on the fact that he reads the Bible and thinking that was the sole cause for why he's doing what he's doing and trying to evangelize. And the fellow in blue says, "Yeah, there's actually a common cause for both of those things. There's actually something else." So once again, the false analogy and the false cause are a couple of fallacies that you really want to watch out for. They can really slip up on you, and certainly it's something to watch out for in your reading. Certainly your observation, again, of advertisements, political slogans, but even things that you read in books and articles as well.